It started like any other weekend getaway. A quiet father-daughter hiking trip meant to be a break from the noise of life. It's turned into one of the most haunting mysteries in Smoky Mountains history. James Holloway, a 43-year-old wildlife photographer, and his 10-year-old daughter Lily were no strangers to the outdoors. Locals would often see them in the foothills with their gear, he with his camera, she with her tiny backpack and endless curiosity. They weren't reckless. If anything, James was known for being extra cautious, always checking weather forecasts, mapping out trails, and leaving detailed itineraries with friends. But on that crisp October morning, something went terribly wrong. They were last seen at a gas station just outside Townsend, Tennessee. Security footage showed James filling up his truck while Lily was laughing in the passenger seat, sipping from a soda can. They seemed happy, calm, nothing unusual. The plan was simple: hike the Abrams Falls Trail, take a few photos for James' wildlife project, and be back by evening. But the sun went down, and they never returned. A search party was launched within 24 hours. What followed was one of the largest search and rescue efforts in the region's history. Over 200 volunteers, park rangers, helicopters, and canine units scoured the area for weeks. They searched the rivers, the cliffs, the thick underbrush. Nothing. Not a shoe print, not a piece of clothing, not a single clue. It was as if the mountains had swallowed them whole. Rumors spread. Some said James had staged their disappearance. Others believed they got lost and were taken by the elements. A few whispered more chilling theories: strangers, wild animals, even something supernatural. But no one had answers. The case eventually went cold, leaving only a pair of names etched on a plaque near the trailhead, in memory of the ones who never came home. For 5 long years, the Smokies kept their secret. The Holloways became a ghost story told around campfires. Their faces faded from news headlines, but not from the hearts of those who loved them. Lily's mother, Sarah, refused to give up. She returned to the trail every year on the anniversary, clutching a photo of her daughter, leaving behind small tokens: a stuffed bear, a note, a single daisy. "I just want her to know I'm still looking," she once told a reporter with trembling hands. And then, something happened. On a cloudy afternoon in late spring, 2 hikers, college students from North Carolina, were exploring a path near Gregory Bald. They weren't looking for anything, just out for fresh air and views. As they climbed up a rocky section of trail, one of them noticed something odd, something wedged deep in a narrow crevice between 2 slabs of stone. At first glance, it looked like debris, maybe a broken branch or piece of litter. But as they got closer, they realized it was fabric, faded, tattered, and strangely out of place. Curious and uneasy, they used a hiking pole to pull it loose. What came out sent a chill down their spines. It was a child's backpack. Dirty, torn, sun-bleached. The colors were barely visible, but one detail stood out: a pink plastic keychain in the shape of a unicorn. Still dangling from the zipper, they called it in immediately. Park rangers responded within the hour. Soon, the area was taped off and swarming with investigators, dogs, and drones. What else they found? What else was hidden inside that narrow rock crevice was more than just a weathered backpack. It was the first real clue in half a decade, and it would reignite a mystery no one ever truly stopped thinking about. Why was the bag so far from the original trail? How did it get there? Was it placed, or was it dropped during an escape or a fall? And if this was Lily's backpack, where was she? Where was James? Forensic teams moved carefully. Every inch of the crevice was searched, every item cataloged. Among the contents were a small spiral notebook, pages warped and smeared by moisture, yet still readable. There were simple doodles, a few words possibly written by a child. One page stood out: a stick figure drawing of a girl holding hands with a tall man under a tree. And the words were waiting, scribbled below in shaky letters. Investigators have not yet confirmed the drawing was Lily's, but the implications are heavy. The notebook is now under analysis, along with the backpack and other fragments recovered from the site. So what really happened to James and Lily Holloway in those woods? Did they try to survive? Did someone find them or follow them? Was this a tragic accident, or is there more to the story than anyone imagined? This discovery has reopened the case, stirred the hearts of many, and raised more questions than answers. The Smoky Mountains have long held stories, but this one feels different. It's personal. It's raw. It's a puzzle, begging to be solved, and now, with this new evidence, the long silence may finally be breaking. But as of now, the rest remains hidden, somewhere out there beneath the trees. James Holloway wasn't just any dad. He had this quiet strength about him, the kind that didn't need loud words or grand gestures. People in town described him as dependable, kind, and deeply devoted to his daughter. After losing his wife to a long illness, James had poured everything into raising Lily. She was his whole world. They were often seen walking hand in hand through the farmer's market on Saturdays, or sharing ice cream by the riverside park. Even at 10, Lily had a mind of her own, curious, full of questions. Always ready with a joke or a story. James worked freelance as a nature photographer, often capturing rare moments in the Smoky Mountains. His photos were featured in a few magazines and travel blogs. But he didn't chase fame. For him, it was about beauty. About documenting the still moments of life, the way mist hangs low in the morning, or how light flickers through pine trees. He was careful. He had gear. He had backup gear. He had lists and plans and weather apps. Which is why when he and Lily didn't return that night, no one believed it was just a case of getting lost. When the search began, it was more than just a community effort. It became a movement. Volunteers showed up from other counties. People brought drones, off-road vehicles, and even their own search dogs. They combed through every inch of the marked trail, and then they went beyond it. Rangers checked nearby caves, water sources, and animal dens. Helicopters scanned from above, shouting through speakers in case James and Lily were stuck somewhere below the treetops. Yet nothing surfaced. Not a single trace. No footprints, no dropped items, no phone signals. Their truck had been parked at the trailhead, locked keys missing. The only thing unusual was the absence of James's camera bag. That, too, had vanished. The case grew stranger when authorities reviewed his last cell activity. James had sent a text to his sister around 10:42 a.m. the morning they disappeared. It simply said, "On trail. Signals weak. All good so far." That was it. No panic. No mention of anything unusual. That text became the final breadcrumb. Over time, theories began to swirl online forums lit up with speculation. Some claimed they fell into a hidden ravine out of sight of search teams. Others insisted there were hidden cave systems in the area, possibly unexplored. A few went darker, talking about drifters or someone stalking them in the woods. But with no evidence, nothing could be confirmed. And after weeks, then months, the energy behind the search began to fade. Lily's mother, Sarah, remained one of the few who never gave up. Though divorced from James, she knew he'd never hurt their daughter. They'd had their struggles, like many couples, but she trusted him with Lily's life. Every year, she'd return to the Smokies, lighting candles near the trail entrance, speaking to local rangers, begging for updates. Her face became familiar, someone you'd see sitting alone on a bench, watching the tree line as if it might return her child at any moment. She kept Lily's room exactly as it was: posters, stuffed animals, even a stack of school books from that year. Hope never left her. But over time, even hope gets quieter. And then came the backpack. The hikers who found it were shaken even before anyone told them what it might be connected to. One of them, Erica, later shared that it didn't feel like trash or a random lost item. It felt placed. That word stayed with people placed. The spot itself was remote, far from the original search area and not on any official trail. It would have been nearly impossible for a child to climb up there alone. The crevice was deep, tight, shadowed even during the day. If it hadn't been for a stray glint of plastic reflecting the light, they would have walked right past it. The items inside were treated like gold. Each piece could mean something. There was the pink unicorn keychain, the spiral notebook, a half-rotted granola bar, and a faded photo of James and Lily folded small like a lucky charm. Forensics was slow, careful. No one wanted to rush and risk contamination. Word spread fast. Reporters returned. Cameras showed up near the trailhead again. Sarah flew in that night and was taken privately to see the items. She didn't say much afterward, only that she recognized the backpack and the drawing. "That's Lily's handwriting," she whispered. "I know it anywhere." And yet the mystery deepened. If the backpack had been there all along, how? Was it missed in the original search? If it had been placed later, who put it there? And why now, after 5 years of silence? Park officials went back through all terrain logs and search maps, trying to figure out if that area had been scanned before. Some claimed yes, others weren't so sure. Visibility in the Smokies changes with seasons. What's clear in spring is hidden by fall. Still, the timing was too strange. Digging further, investigators reviewed James's last few weeks before the hike. Nothing jumped out, no strange calls, no financial red flags, no known enemies. But they did find one odd detail, a photo he'd posted to his personal blog a week before disappearing. It was of a tree massive, gnarled, growing sideways off a rock ledge. In the caption, James wrote, "Some places speak to you. Some hold their breath. I think I found both. No GPS tag. No location details, but the tree." It looked eerily close to the ledge near where the backpack was found. Now, questions are pouring in faster than answers. Was James trying to lead someone to a clue? Or was that tree a warning, a marker, something he noticed and photographed for a reason? As the forest remains still, eyes have turned to one haunting thought. What if someone else was out there that day? Someone who saw them and didn't want them found. As investigators returned to the Smokies with fresh eyes and new urgency, they started looking at everything from the ground up literally. Every trail near the discovery site was walked again. Every tree and boulder was studied for signs that may have been missed. And in the middle of this renewed search, whispers began to surface. Old ranger stories, faded trail maps showing abandoned paths, and a handful of local legends that now felt a little too close to real. Back in the early 2000s, there had been a series of strange disappearances near the same region, mostly solo hikers. No kids, no families. But all cases had one thing in common. They veered off marked trails and were never seen again. At the time, it was written off as misadventure. The park is massive, unpredictable. Weather can change in minutes. But with the Holloway's backpack turning up in an area previously thought unreachable, those old files were being quietly reopened. Meanwhile, Sarah began speaking more openly to the media. Not just because of the renewed attention, but because she felt something wasn't right. Her instincts, sharpened by years of grief, told her the story was more than just nature reclaiming to lives. She remembered James talking, just weeks before the trip, about hearing things in the woods, distant footsteps, low whistles, a sense of being watched. He'd brushed it off at the time. Maybe an animal, maybe his imagination. But he'd said it twice. And now, with her daughter's belongings found in a crack of stone no 10-year-old could reach alone. Those memories felt darker. Reporters dug deeper, trying to follow threads that law enforcement wouldn't comment on. One name came up: Pelliet Drenner, a survivalist who used to live off-grid deep within the Smokies. He'd been seen near town years ago, usually only to buy supplies, and was known for being paranoid and territorial. He vanished himself in 2013. Some say he moved on. Others claimed he just disappeared deeper into the forest. His name resurfaced, not because of direct links, but because some of his old campsites were less than 2 miles from where the backpack was found. But here's where things took an even stranger turn. A drone crew from an independent Surge Hand Rescue YouTube channel was filming a segment near the Holloway site when they caught footage of something odd. High up on a ridge, barely visible through the trees, was what appeared to be a manling, with a beard, standing perfectly still. He was watching them. The team zoomed in, but just as the drone locked focus, the figure moved into the shadows. Gone, the video spread quickly online. Some dismissed it as a hiker. Others were convinced. It was proof that someone, maybe even James, was still alive. A few thought it was just coincidence. But for Sarah, it cracked something open. She watched that footage dozens of times. The way the figure stood, the slope of the shoulders, the outline. She couldn't be sure, but something about it reminded her of James. While authorities remained cautious, quietly checking for recent off-grid activity in the area, another subplot began to stir, one that added even more confusion. James's old camera card was anonymously mailed to a local ranger station. No note, no return address. Just the SD card inside a plain white envelope, postmarked from Asheville. Forensics confirmed it had not been touched in years. And on that card were over 400 images, presumed to be the last James took before vanishing. Most of the photos were typical: landscape shots, animals, sunrises. But the final few were different. The lighting was darker, the angles tilted. One showed what looked like a narrow cave entrance nearly hidden behind thick brush. Another showed Lily standing beside the same tree from his earlier blog photo, her face serious. The last photo was blurry, as if the camera had been dropped or moved quickly, just branches and a smear of shadow. But in the corner, partially obscured, there was something else, what looked like a second hand. Not Lily's, not James's. The photo went under analysis, but the image was too distorted for a clear ID. Still, suggested one chilling possibility. They weren't alone that day. As theories spun faster than ever, Sarah faced her own doubts. Could James have planned to disappear? Could he have gone deeper into the wilderness with Lily for some reason no one yet understood? Friends said it was unthinkable. But one cousin recalled a strange conversation years ago James had mentioned. Feeling overwhelmed, tired of society's pressure, and curious what real freedom might look like. It was a throwaway comment at the time, but now every memory took on weight. Local rangers, meanwhile, started exploring less used routes, areas, not officially mapped, but passed down through word of mouth. Some of these were said to lead to old mining shafts, hunting shacks, even rumored hideouts used during Prohibition. A few of these places had long since collapsed or become inaccessible. But the terrain was rough, and every new lead brought fresh danger. Still, search teams pressed on, driven by one question that no one could answer. If James and Lily were alive for even a little while after disappearing, what kept them hidden? Then came an unexpected twist. A woman named Karen Bell came forward. Artist and part-time trail guide who had been camping solo 5 years ago, just days after the Holloways vanished. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, but she now remembered something strange. One night, she heard a child crying. Faint, far away, but unmistakable. She stepped out of her tent with a flashlight, called out, even walked toward the sound. But the crying stopped, Thinking it might have been an animal mimic, she eventually went back to bed. She never reported it. But hearing about the backpack made her speak up. It added another layer. Could they have been alive for days, maybe longer? Injured, trapped, hiding, or were they being held? More and more, the forest began to feel like a character in the story, watchful, secretive, silent. People who had hiked those woods for years suddenly felt uneasy, as if something had shifted. One ranger privately admitted that he avoids certain areas now. "You feel it," he said, "like the trees are holding something back." And they just might be. Because even now, with the backpack found, the camera card recovered, and leads being chased across every corner of the Smokies, James and Lily Holloway have not been found. And the truth remains just out of reach somewhere deep in those woods, waiting. With each new discovery, it felt like the forest was slowly waking up, revealing just enough to stir the past, but never enough to make anything clear. The air around the trailhead changed. Locals who used to hike the Smokies without hesitation began second-guessing every crunch underfoot. Search teams were more cautious now, not just because of terrain, but because something about this story no longer felt like an accident. It felt deliberate. Controlled Sarah stayed close to the investigation. She spent nights in a nearby cabin, refusing to leave until they had answers. She'd go up the trail with rangers whenever she was allowed, never complaining, never slowing them down. Even as her shoes wore thin and her voice grew tired, she pushed forward. One morning, as the sun was barely up, a ranger handed her a sealed bag. Inside was a child's bracelet, plastic beads stretched from wear. The letter L dangled from the elastic. Sarah didn't say a word. She just pressed it to her chest and nodded. It was Lily's. It had been found wedged beneath a fallen log, not far from the same rocky ridge where the backpack had turned up. But that ridge was becoming more than just a location. It was starting to feel like a message. Too many signs. Too many things suddenly appearing in places that had already been searched. And then came the cave. After studying James's final photos in more detail, rangers identified a particular rock formation in the background, one they believed was near the eastern side of Gregory Ridge. It wasn't on the main path. But there were markers, faint symbols scratched into bark, almost like trail signs made by hand. Someone had passed through there. Someone who didn't want to be followed. On the third day of searching that section, a team discovered a narrow entryway hidden behind an overhang. From the outside, it looked like just another pocket in the rock. But once inside, they found something chilling: burnt wood from an old fire, scraps of canvas, and a child's sock half buried in ash. They didn't call it a campsite. They called it a hideout. No bodies, no bones, no blood. But someone had been there. Recently, a ranger described the feeling as stepping into someone's shadow. It was quiet, too quiet. Like the moment just before a storm, a trail of disturbed soil led deeper into the cave system. It was narrow, winding, too dangerous to rush. Drones were sent in first, and their footage was eerie: tight turns, scratched walls, even a few crude markings that looked almost like arrows. The deeper the drones went, the weaker the signal got, until the feed cut out completely. When one of them finally made it back to the surface, it had captured 10 seconds of footage that changed everything. A pair of muddy shoes, tucked neatly beside a stone wall, too small to be adult-sized. The world outside the park was now watching closely. The mystery had taken over news cycles again. Missing Smoky Mountains girls' shoes found in hidden cave was on every major headline. Online theories surged. Some believed James and Lily had been living underground. Others were convinced someone had kept them there. But the question that haunted everyone was this: why hadn't they ever tried to come out? Back at the cave, search crews were preparing to enter on foot. It was dangerous. The passage narrowed in places, air thinned, and the cave curved in unnatural ways. Still, a team of 4 went in, 2 with cameras mounted to their helmets. They followed the trail of markings deeper than anyone had gone before. An hour passed, then 2. They didn't speak much over the radios. The signal was thin. But just after the 3rd hour, one of them whispered something that made every hair on Sarah's neck stand. "There's light up ahead." It didn't make sense. No openings were mapped that deep. No way sunlight could reach there. But the footage confirmed it, faint, flickering like the glow of a lantern or a small fire. The team paused, debating whether to go farther. One of them, a veteran ranger, said what everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to say out loud. What if we're not the first to get here? They pressed on. The tunnel opened slightly, leading into a small chamber. And what they found was unlike anything they expected. Blankets, old canned food, even a stack of children's books eaten away by moisture. On one of the walls was a series of handprints, small ones, pressed into the rock using soot. Nearby, a name had been scratched into the stone. Lily. It was clear someone had lived there. Someone had hidden there. The team swept the area quickly, searching for signs of recent life. Everything looked abandoned, but not destroyed, like someone had left, knowing they'd return. And that's what terrified everyone. Because if James and Lily had been alive, hiding here, surviving somehow for months, or even years, then why did they leave everything behind now? And if they weren't the ones who left, who did? Back at base camp, Sarah was shown the helmet footage. She watched silently, her hands trembling as the handprints came into view. She didn't need confirmation. She knew. That was her daughter's name. Her daughter's prints. She broke down for the first time in days, not from grief, but from the sheer weight of being this close. But just as hope began to rise again, something else happened. One of the search team's radios picked up interference, faint, stacky, but clear enough. It was a voice. A child's voice. "Hello." Then silence. They replayed the clip dozens of times. Off. The voice was soft, scared, and uncertain. It only lasted 2 seconds. But it was unmistakably a little girl. And it was live. Someone had spoken from deep inside that cave system. Now, time wasn't just precious, was vanishing. Rangers gathered everything, preparing to go deeper. New teams were assembled. Ropes, air monitors, food, and emergency packs. Everyone was focused. Everyone knew what was at stake, because somewhere beyond the rocks and shadows, a truth waited. And whatever was about to be uncovered, it was closer than ever. As the rescue team prepared to re-enter the cave system, pressure mounted. What began as a cold case had now turned into a full-scale emergency. That faint voice over the radio, possibly Lily's, was the first living sound connected to the disappearance in 5 years. It wasn't just hope anymore. It was proof that someone, possibly still alive, was somewhere in those tunnels. But the conditions were unforgiving. The cave narrowed further in places, and oxygen readings dropped. Unexpectedly, the deeper they went. Still, there was no turning back. Sarah refused to leave base camp. Every time a team entered, she stood at the edge of the perimeter, eyes fixed on the cave mouth, like it might breathe her daughter out any second. She hadn't slept in over 24 hours, but no one had the heart to tell her to rest. She was driven by something more than exhaustion, some gut-deep pull that only mothers seem to understand. Then, just as the new team began their descent, something unexpected happened. A call came in from a local ranger station nearly 30 miles away. A hiker had reported finding strange symbols carved into the trees, fresh ones. They weren't graffiti. They looked like the same symbols found near the entrance to the cave. What made it more unsettling was where they were found, along an old, nearly forgotten trail that split off the Appalachian Loop. The hiker said he followed the markings for about an hour before feeling deeply uneasy, like he was being watched. Then, just as he turned back, he claimed he saw a figure darting between trees. Too tall to be a child. Wearing dark clothing. Silent. The man didn't stay long enough to get a better look. But he was sure of one thing. Whoever it was didn't want to be followed. Suddenly, two locations were in play. The cave, where the voice was heard. And now this second trail, marked with the same strange signs. It didn't add up. Was someone trying to mislead the search teams? Or worse, was someone still out there deliberately moving pieces around to confuse and delay? The decision was made to split resources. A smaller team would continue deeper into the cave, and a second unit would investigate the new trail signs. As both efforts moved forward, tension ran high. Every step felt like chasing a shadow. Back in the cave, the team made it into a lower chamber one that hadn't been reached before due to flooding. As they pushed through the cold water, their flashlights revealed something shocking. A crude wooden structure tucked into a rock alcove. Not quite a door, but more like a barrier. It had been built intentionally. Rope, boards, nails, as if someone had tried to keep something or someone out. Or in. Just as they moved closer, the radio cracked again. Static at first. Then, one word. Quiet, but undeniable. Dad. They froze. Sarah, listening from above, collapsed into a chair when she heard it. The voice was faint, like it was coming from the other side of the wooden barrier. But the emotion in that one word broke everyone in the room. They called out. No response. They started to dismantle the structure carefully, but the deeper they got, the more obvious it became this wasn't a space built for shelter. It felt like a trap. Like a prison. Meanwhile, the second team following the new trail markings made a discovery of their own. Buried under a shallow pile of leaves, they found a camera. Not modern, but one of James's older models. The memory card was still inside, remarkably intact. They brought it back to base for immediate review. What they found on the card turned everything upside down. There were recent photos. Not from 5 years ago, these were recent. Days old. One image showed a hand reaching toward the lens. Another showed the back of Lily's head. In one, James stood in a clearing, staring directly into the camera, eyes hollow and tired. His beard was longer, his clothes worn. But it was him. The timestamp confirmed the image had been taken just 4 days ago. James was alive, but that wasn't the twist in the final image. Captured possibly by accident, a third figure stood just behind James and Lily. Their face was partially hidden by branches, but their presence was undeniable. They weren't part of the family. They were watching. And James looked afraid. That one photo changed everything. It suggested what no one wanted to say aloud. Someone had been with them all this time. Someone had controlled where they went, when they moved, and maybe even what they could say back in the cave. The team finally broke through the wooden barrier only to find another tunnel, this one sloping sharply downward. The temperature dropped. The air grew damp. At the far end, more signs, scratched drawings, pieces of clothing, a broken flashlight. But no James, no Lily. They were close. Too close to quit now. But it was clear this wasn't just a case of a man and his daughter lost in the wilderness. Someone had helped them disappear, or forced them to. And now, that someone might know the search is closing in, because whoever's been hiding in these woods for 5 years, they aren't hiding anymore. They're moving, watching, and maybe, just maybe, preparing for what happens next. The search team inside the cave pushed forward through the tight passage, their lights slicing through the thick darkness. Every step was slower, more deliberate, their breaths shallow. The tension hung in the air like fog. No one spoke. They knew they were close. The trail of signs, the sound of Lily's voice, the camera with recent photos, it all pointed to this moment. And then, in the silence, one of the team members stopped. He raised his hand slowly and pointed to a faint glow just ahead. It flickered like candlelight. Barely visible through the narrow bend of the rock, they rounded the corner in a small chamber. No more than 8 feet across, they found James. He was sitting cross-legged near the far wall, a makeshift lamp beside him casting a dim light across his face. He looked up, blinking against the brightness of their flashlights, and for a few seconds, no one said anything. He was thinner, aged, his beard thick and graying, his eyes hollow from years in the dark. But he was alive. And behind him, lying wrapped in a blanket, was Lily. She stirred as the lights hit her, blinking sleepily. Her face was pale, but unharmed. And when she sat up and looked at the team, she whispered just one word. "You found us." Emotion swept through the chamber. The lead ranger called it in immediately. Sarah, still at base camp, fell to her knees when she heard the words over the radio. "We've got them. Both alive." But the relief didn't last long. James was quiet as the medics checked them both. His hands trembled. His voice was hoarse. But he kept repeating the same thing over and over. "We can't stay here. He's coming back." The team tried to press him for answers, but James was clearly on edge, glancing over his shoulder constantly. Then, as if pushed by desperation, he pointed toward the narrow passage they'd come through. "He took us," James said. "He's been living in the forest. He's sick, twisted. We tried to escape so many times, but he knows the woods better than anyone." The pieces were finally fitting together. Whoever the figure was in the camera, whoever had left those fresh markings near the old trail, he wasn't a ghost. He was real. And for years, he had kept James and Lily hidden, alive but trapped deep within the cave system. Isolated, controlled. One of the rangers asked, "Why didn't you call for help?" James lowered his head. "Every time we tried to leave, he found us. Every time. He knew how to move through the tunnels without sound. He threatened to hurt Lily. He made me stay." As the rescue team began escorting them out, the tension inside the cave began to lift, but outside, things were unraveling. The second team that had been following the new trail markers radioed in with a disturbing update. They had found signs of a fresh camp, only hours old. Footprints, ashes from a fire, still warm, and a hand-carved wooden figure left sitting on a stone. Shaped like a child, someone was still nearby. Suddenly, radio static exploded in the channel. A voice, low and distorted, came through just a few chilling words. "You shouldn't have come." Silence followed. Back at the cave entrance, the rescue team picked up their pace. James gripped Lily's hand tightly as they climbed upward. The walls began to widen. Fresh air pushed against their faces. They were nearly out. Sarah was waiting, just outside, flanked by paramedics and rangers. She ran forward as soon as she saw them, collapsing into Lily's arms, crying and laughing all at once. But James didn't stop. He turned to the lead ranger, panic still in his voice. "He's still down there. He knows a deeper path. He'll follow us." And just then, one of the remaining team members shouted from inside the cave. Movement. Behind them, the rangers rushed in, weapons ready. The flashlight beams darted across the cave walls, landing on a figure sprinting back into the darkness. Tall, fast, wearing a dark hood. He vanished before they could reach him. They gave chase, but the tunnels twisted and split unpredictably. After 20 minutes, they lost him. The deeper passage led to a network no one had mapped before. It was clear now this man had lived down here for years, moving, hiding, watching outside. James and Lily were finally safe in an ambulance. Sarah rode with them, clutching her daughter's hand as if she'd never let go again. The cameras rolled, news spread. Father and daughter found alive after 5 years in Smoky Mountains. The world watched in disbelief. But just as the sun began to rise and hope filled the air, one of the rangers returned from the cave, pale and shaken. He held out something small, something they'd found hidden near the wall of the last chamber. A notebook, bound with tape. Inside were pages of names, dates, and locations written in small, tight handwriting. None of them were James or Lily. There were other names, dozens of them, people who had gone missing in the Smokies over the last 20 years. Some had never been connected. Some had been forgotten until now. It was never just about James and Lily. Someone had been using the forest for far longer than anyone realized, and somewhere, beneath the mountains, he was still there, watching, waiting. The ambulance carrying James, Lily, and Sarah drove slowly down the winding road from the mountain, away from the darkness that had held them for so long. James sat with his eyes half closed, holding Lily's hand while Sarah gently brushed hair. From her daughter's face, still unable to believe she was finally home. The air outside was warming with the sun, and the thick fog that usually hugged the trees had started to lift. For the first time in 5 years, the Holloway family was whole again. In the following days, the cave system was sealed off by authorities. Forensics teams moved carefully through every tunnel and passage James had described. More symbols were found on the cave walls, more signs of a presence of person who had lived deep in the mountains and remained hidden for years. The journal recovered near the final chamber was handed over to federal investigators. After cross-referencing the names with missing persons cases across Tennessee and surrounding states, they confirmed the worst. At least 12 names matched individuals who had vanished without a trace in the last 2 decades. James later told authorities everything he remembered. He described the man tall, quiet, with eyes that never blinked, and a voice that rarely rose above a whisper. He said the man never gave a name, never explained why he took them. James had woken up one morning just hours after beginning their hike with a deep cut on his head and Lily missing. He followed the symbols through the forest and eventually found her unharmed, but scared. From that moment on, they were watched, moved, and controlled. Sometimes the man would vanish for days, but he always came back. They survived off stored food and what they could scavenge, never knowing if help would come. Lily didn't speak much at first. Doctors said it might take time, but she smiled every time Sarah entered the room. She carried the unicorn keychain from her backpack everywhere, holding it like a promise that the world hadn't forgotten her. The man still unnamed and still missing became the focus of a nationwide manhunt. Rangers searched the dense woods, assisted by helicopters, drones, and tracking dogs. But no sign of him turned up. It was as if he'd vanished into the mountain itself. Some believed he knew the Smokies so well that he could live undetected for years to come. Others said he was never meant to be found. But one thing was clear: the Holloways weren't the first. They had simply been the only ones to return. The camera photos helped piece together a loose timeline. From time to time, James had managed to hide the device and take pictures, leaving clues in case someone ever stumbled upon them. The last few images, the ones with the figure watching, had been taken only days before they were found. James believed the man had grown careless or perhaps overconfident. That misstep allowed the trail to reopen. In the end, it was a small, pink backpack and a glint of plastic caught in the sunlight that changed everything. News outlets continued to cover the story for weeks. It was called one of the most haunting true stories of survival in modern history. Headlines read, "Father and daughter survive 5 years in Smoky Mountains and cave horror sparks new missing persons investigations." People across the country sent messages of support. Offers came in counseling, housing, even scholarships for Lily's future. But the Holloways kept their distance from the spotlight. They were grateful, but what they needed most was peace, Sarah, eventually moved with James and Lily to a quiet town in North Carolina, away from the media, away from the forests that once held their nightmare. Lily started school again, slowly opening up to teachers and classmates. She began to draw trees, animals, sunlight breaking through clouds. In one of her first drawings, she added something small in the corner, a stick figure holding hands, with a little girl both standing in front of a big open door. James took a long time to recover. He struggled with guilt the years he lost, the moments he couldn't protect Lily. But therapy helped, and time did too. He picked up his camera. Again, he didn't go far, just local parks, quiet streets, backyard birds. But in each photo, there was something more than just light and focus. There was purpose. Though the man from the cave was never caught, the case led to changes. New trails in the Smoky Mountains were reviewed and remapped. More cameras were installed. Volunteer ranger groups were formed to regularly patrol lesser-known paths. Awareness around missing hikers increased. Families who had lost loved ones returned to the park, hoping they might finally find answers like the Holloways did. And while not all stories had endings, some found closure they'd never thought possible. Years later, when Lily was 15, she gave her first public interview. She didn't go into detail. She didn't need to. She simply said, "The mountains kept us. But people found us. That means something." Her words stuck with people, shared across social media, quoted in articles, even etched onto a plaque near the Abrams Falls Trail. Hope is quiet, but it never stops walking. The Smoky Mountains still held their secrets. The trees still whispered. But one mystery had been pulled from their shadows. And with that, a little more light reached the forest floor. The story of James and Lily Holloway became more than just a survival tale. It became a reminder to keep searching, to keep hoping, to listen when instincts speak. Because sometimes, even when everything is lost, a pink backpack in the sunlight is enough to bring the lost home again.